going to be tying up a bloodworm pattern, another bloodworm pattern. I really like to fish with these. They're really productive. I've got a gammy hook in the vise. It's the 2405. I've got a .01 lead that I am going to put on this hook just to weight it down a little bit, to help it get down into the water a little bit faster. So I'm just taking some touching turns with this lead, and then I'll kind of tug on it while I move it back and forth, and it will come right off for me. Then I've got this tag end back here, and we're going to do the same kind of thing there, where we'll just kind of wiggle it back and forth, and it'll come back off. From there, I can kind of just squish those two ends together, and we will start with our thread right behind the eye. And I like to use, on this one, I'm using a 140 denier, which is a little bit beefier thread. I'll also put my finger, kind of like you can see, behind the lead, because I don't want it to slide back on me while I'm making these wraps. So I'll just do that to help me keep that in place until we jump off the very end. And at that point we should be nice and secure. So I'm going to take it pretty deep around the bend, and we are going to take quite a few thread wraps in order to cover up the lead wire there. This is really a basic pattern, but one that's really effective. So I'm tying in a piece of silver brassy sized wire, and that's really the last ingredient on this whole fly. So I'm going to come back down a little bit, and then I'm just going to draw that wire back so it's behind the last wraps of that lead. And with that, I can just come back down around the bend of the hook here. With my thread, I'm going to come back up so that I can have a nice transition into the lead here. And I will spin my bobbin counterclockwise a few times just to let it flatten out a little bit so we get a slimmer kind of profile. One of the things you'll want to make sure you do when you're tying a pattern like this is hopefully you've got a rotary vise and you can kind of twist it like that. And I'm going to do that because I've found that I've inadvertently several times covered up that lead wire from my viewpoint where I can see. Only to find that some of the wire was still showing through on the other side of the hook. So now I like to do that kind of spinning back and forth just so that I can make sure that I am covering up the lead and it's not showing through my thread on either side of the hook. And that's looking about right there. So from here we're going to build up a tiny little bump of thread here that's just going to allow this pattern to transition as we move down towards the eye of the hook. So once I'm right there at the eye of the hook, I'm just going to go ahead and grab my silver wire, and we're just going to take wraps up, not too tight together, but I do like to kind of pull on the wire somewhat tight just to allow it to sink into the thread a little bit and not end up sliding down towards the previous wrap. So I'm just trying to keep these evenly spaced as we move down the end of this hook. And I love this hook. I mean, it works great for this pattern, for this bloodworm pattern. So we're going to take that all of the way down to the eye of the hook, and then I'm just going to take my thread and we're going to take just a couple of wraps. I want to be somewhat judicious with the wraps because I'm using 140 denier, so it can build up really fast. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and use our spiral copter friction method and break that piece of silver wire off. I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra thread. Grab my whip finisher. We'll just take a few turns with our whip finisher here. Hold that nice and tight. I'll turn my vise sideways. I'll use the back end of my whip finisher, which is also a thread cutting tool, to remove our thread from the fly. So just a variation on the bloodworm. Great pattern to use. I love using bloodworms. I've caught a lot of fish on them, so give this one a shot.